but today we got a very special surprise for us all. We have always been asking questions about how can we break into the industry of comics, how can we join other companies, how can we make our portfolios, how can we write stories, how can we have our own journey. But today we got the man that have done them all, that have done the writing, have as an artist, as a creator, and as a publisher too. Please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome the living legend, Mr. Erik Larsen. Hello there, Mr. Erik.
How you doing?
How's everything going?
Everything's going well so far. I mean, as well as can be expected under the circumstances with the whole pandemic in full swing. But
That's cool.
I'm fully vaccinated, so life is gradually getting back to a semi-normal.
So you don't feel any mutations from the vaccine turning into Spawn or
No.
Dragon Savage or something?
Yeah, it's crushingly disappointing. I just don't I don't get sick as easily as other people.
Okay, before we head to the scripted questions, I already sent you first that seems to be unscripted too. So I'm going to ask you a couple fun ones, actually. Um, every superhero have his own secret origins. So I'm going to ask, what's the secret origins of Erik Larsen?
Uh, there's not nothing too secret at this point. It's all kind of out there. Uh, I grew up with my dad and my family, and my dad collected comic books when he was a little kid. So we grew up with his old golden age comic book collection that he bought when he was a small kid, and so comic books have kind of always been part of my existence. And and I just started drawing my own stuff when I was really little, and started drawing my own comic books on 8.5 by 11 paper, folded in half and stapled up the side. And I did that for years and years and years, starting in around the fourth grade. And I just was creating my own characters and making up my own stories. And when I was 19, me and a couple other guys self-published a comic book called Graphic Fantasy, and that was again my own characters there. So that was the first time that the dragon saw print, and then that particular job led to other jobs because we just let everybody know, hey, we published this thing, and we put ads in various publications, and we sent out review copies to whoever we thought might say something. And a couple of guys who were starting up their own books contacted me about doing work for them, and that was the start of that. And it started off very small. It was, hardly like $15 a page or something ridiculous. And
Hmm.
but it was something, and it was it was all practice. It was all trying to
Wow.
figure stuff
Yeah.
out, get to a point where I could do this for a living. So it was just a
Yeah.
gradual working my way up the food stream kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so eager to learn more about this journey. So, as an artist and as a writer, everyone have his own weapons of choice. Pencils, kind of graphic tablets, or um, some standard pens and pencils, inking papers, light table. So, what's your secret weapons for writing and for making art?
Uh, over- Writing, I think we everybody just uses a regular computer and just types away at that. Um, so I don't even know what program I'm using. Was it Word or something? I don't even know. In terms of drawing, it's I use your standard number two pencil. just the regular school pencil that any kid would use at school when they're doing whatever school stuff they do. And then inking wise, it's mostly a Hunt 102, which is a dip pen, sometimes called a crow quill.
Mhm.
And then I use a brush, which is Winsor Newton. I don't know, series something something. It's not a very big brush, uh, and I've never been very good at using a brush. Try though I might. Uh, so I mostly use it for filling in blacks and sometimes a little bit of outlines, but not a huge amount. I've just never got a handle on it. Uh,
Mhm.
and then, for straight lines, when I need to do those, I'll use like a Pentel rolling writer or some other marker that's similarly shaped. Uh, I just want to be able to get a thin deadline doing that. And I don't know what else. I mean, there's occasionally there'll be some Japanese marker that I'll be introduced to, and I'll be like, "Oh, I got to use this. This is the tool." And then it's like, "Ah, this sucks. We'll stop using it." And I always seem to return back to the 102, which I
Mm.
seem
That's
to be
cool.
most comfortable with.
That's cool. So, what are the shows do you love watching?
What shows do I love watching?
Yeah.
I don't watch it. I don't watch much of anything. I just my wife will watch stuff, and I'll sit there with her. But otherwise, I don't really seek out television.
Mhm.
Sorry to
No,
say.
it's okay. Do you have any secret hobbies
Not
other than
secret.
art and writing?
No. There's nothing. This takes up a lot of my time. It might find that
Hmm.
hard to believe, but just with the comics, it's such a huge job, and there's so many things to it that this just
Hmm.
ends up taking up an enormous amount of time.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I'm just doing that constantly. It's all comics all the time. So I'm either creating art or consuming it. And like that, I
Yeah.
don't have that much dead time to do other stuff. And when it comes to TV, it's like my wife will be, let's watch this, and we're like, all right, we'll
Mm.
buzz on through it. Mostly binge watching whatever on Netflix or what have you.
Mm.
So
This is a very important thing us creators must learn from you that we shouldn't have such free time to spend and waste on TV and other stuff. If you do love art and do love comics, please, whoever is watching us, please, our audience, feel free to do your time, enjoy your time making the thing you love. Thing you love, it will make you reach your goals much faster. And please feel free, our audience on Twitch, YouTube, on Facebook, to join us with your questions, your wonderings, everything you would like to know about Mr. Erik Larsen and comics. Uh, Savage Dragon. Today, we got him with us today so he can answer all of our questions. So feel free to send them to us.
all right.
Yeah. Uh, well, the first thing I'm going to ask you is how did you start your career as a writer and as an artist and as a publisher?
Um, well, it was kind of like what I just ran through. So, I mean, I was drawing my own comics as a kid, so I just got a lot of experience doing that. And then as I was doing stuff all the time, I was creating samples, and I kept sending them to Marvel and sending them to DC and sending them to whoever would give me any feedback or anything and hope for the best. And I corresponded somewhat with Jim Shooter, who was the editor in chief at Marvel at the time, and so there was a
Mhm.
little bit of back and forth with him, um, but no job offers, at least through the mail. But he did had an awareness of that I existed on this planet, so there was that. And then as I started getting work in the minor leagues, as it were, I was able to amass a portfolio of work that I had done, and this is all for small companies. And eventually, that just gave me a body of stuff that I could show him. And so I met him at a Chicago convention at one point, and he's like, "So you're a professional now?" Because I had a stack of stuff, and he was like, "Yes, I am." And then it's actually sat down and batted out a plot for a Hulk versus Thor story at the convention. And from that, I went home and drew it up, and then it eventually became an issue of Thor. Uh, and that once I'd done that, that was my best samples ever, because it was exactly the stuff that I like to draw. It was just two guys kicking the crap out of each other, and and when you see those on samples, it's like, well, I know what Hulk looks like, I know what Thor looks like. This is you're really showcasing what I could do. Um, so that was a good start. That was fun.
Yeah, yeah, this was epic actually. So we got here a couple of questions from Russia. Russia, she is an artist too, an Egyptian one, saying I can't hear him clearly, unfortunately, but the sound is so good actually. I can hear him quite well. So if anyone would like to tell us if the sound is quite clear or not, please feel free.
All right, I'll speak up. How about that?
Okay. He's from Carlos Rafael. Do you see yourself slowing down or retiring, or do you see yourself doing this another 20 years?
I would like to do it until I drop dead, but we'll see how that goes. Um, it's been a lot of fun so far. Um, I'm kind of slowing down right now, and I wish that wasn't the case. I'm actually kind of trying to battle my way through an artist block that I really haven't had to deal with in a long, long, long time. And so having to having to cope with that has been like an ordeal. But hopefully, I can get through this fine and get on the other side and be okay with it, because I really do love making comics and really do love doing this stuff. So I want to do it forever.
Mm. Well, before we head to the other questions, uh, there the other ones saying that the voice is so low, but this is so strange. I can hear him quite well.
Hmm. I don't know if you can adjust things on your side. I don't.
I adjusted the settings. I raised the voice to 120, so I think it should be fine now. Well, as he has been, as Mr. Eric have been replying to your question, Carlos, this man is actually a true drawing dragon. He is not going to abandon drawing or making comics at all. So forget
Well,
about him leaving the job or leaving the comic industry.
well, it's been a great run so far, and I'm having a good time doing it. So hopefully, I can do this a while longer. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'd do if I wasn't doing it.
Yeah, yeah. That's the great
I have
motivation
no
of
other
them all.
skill. So
Well, Niobe Comics. Hello, Eric. Much respect for the image founders. You guys made what I do possible. As a comic creator of the book Niobe, I need to say much live, brother. Well,
all right.
thanks
Well,
to you, Niobe. Well,
you're
Said,
certainly welcome. If I've helped at all, uh, you're certainly welcome.
yeah,
I'll do more.
Said Sabah. Image is one of an inspiration. That's so true. Actually, Image have shaped much and lot among our era and our love for comics.
All right.
Niobe Comics, love brothers. Many thanks to you, Niobe Comics. Carlos Rafael, that's great news. I love his dragon and ant, and he is an inspiration to me. Always has been. Actually, this man is an inspiration to all of us creators, writers, and pencilers. artists everywhere. Also, this man we should learn from being humble and being supportive to others. This is an addition I want to add to the ones who is listening to us right
All right. Well, thanks for that.
now. Thanks to you.
All
So,
right.
what's your workflow? We know that every artist struggles with arranging the day. Every creator struggles with arranging his or her day between if he or she is having a job and a side job as a freelance, or if he is totally a total full-time artist, how he or she can manage the day with family, friends, work, and making comics illustrations.
Um, yeah, I just work. I just work all the damn time. I mean, really, I get up, I have breakfast, and I'm at the drawing board or at the computer as soon as possible. Usually, I start.
When do you wake up?
I'm not a super early riser, so usually I'm downstairs eating breakfast at 9ish, and then I'm
Mm,
up here, hopefully hitting the drawing board no later than 10. Uh, and in terms of how I actually work, I at this point I'm not. I don't script. Uh, I don't start from a script. I actually just start drawing, and then
mm.
as
Doodling
the
and warming up.
so I just make it up as I go. I'm writing as I'm drawing, and if I have
Mhm,
specific dialogue in mind when I'm drawing it, I will write it on the side of the page. But
mhm,
otherwise, I just start kicking out pages and just start penciling stuff. It's usually pretty rough. My
mhm,
my initial pass on penciling is kind of pure figure placement. So you
mhm,
can go like, okay, the figure is roughly here, and they're doing roughly that, and then I just refine as you're going along. When it comes time to actually ink, there's some stuff really needs to get tightened up quite a bit so that I can ink it. And then there's other things which are very free form, or I can just come in with a pen or a brush and just kind of chunk away at that. Like I've never had to do detailed penciling on a rock or on a bush or on a tree or a lot of stuff like that. That's organic. I don't have
mhm,
to do a lot of heavy duty penciling and figuring out. Whereas on faces, on hands, on a lot of the figure work, you have to kind of come in and figure out a lot of that stuff before you can commit it to ink. Um, so it's very very piecemeal. It's my pages will have some stuff that's really well defined in pencil, and then some stuff that's super vague. Um, and then I'll ink parts of it, and so there'll be pages that have got like faces that I couldn't wait to ink and hands that
mhm.
I and sometimes I'll do it. Um, Sometimes I'll pencil out the whole issue. Sometimes I'll do it page by page as I go. There's really there's no set way that I do it. I've had at times where I'll do layouts and do
Well, this is
small.
leading to another two questions. How many hours do you spend daily drawing?
Uh, Not probably maybe 8 hours a day drawing.
That's
So
cool.
I'm probably in this office way more than I actually get done in terms of actually drawing. Because I'll be in here, but I'll be like, I need to do the letters page, and I need to write an introduction to this, or I need to script this. Um,
Hmm.
so it's kind of all over the place, and depending on the letterer that I'm working with, and depending on the colorist, usually I'll feed pages to the colorist as I go. So
Hmm.
as I'm drawing it, I'll scan in a page and send it to the colorist. So that by the time I get to the end of the book, and done inking page 20, usually usually it'll be scripted and lettered and colored like a couple days later because I'll have done everything as I'm going. So, when it comes down to the bitter end, it's like I finished drawing my last page, but the colorist has already colored the previous 19 pages, so he just needs to color that last one, and then it's out the door. And if I'm scripting as I go, which I do sometimes, I'll just be like, I finished page one, and now here's the script of page one, and I'm finished page two, and here's the script of page two, and so I can really do it that way too. But there's no consistent way that I'm doing it every single time. I'll
Hmm.
try I'll try it various different ways just to mix things up and see what that feels like, and like, wow, what's working this month? Well, try that out. What's working next month? So try something different. Always trying to find a better way of doing my work. And sometimes it
Yeah,
works out, and sometimes it doesn't.
we all try to. Well, here's another one from Russia asking, what is the most challenging scenes that face you while working on comic books?
Um, anything that has cars in it or animals, because suddenly it's like, oh, I don't know how to anything I don't know how to draw really becomes problematic. Um, but like I draw the worst cars in the world, and I just kind of fudge those as best I can. Um, sometimes
um,
I'll be like, I'm just gonna find a photograph and I'm just gonna trace this out because I can't do it for to save my life.
mhm,
But usually, it's I've been doing this long enough that I can kind of fudge most anything that I need to. There's not a
mhm,
lot of stuff where I'm sitting here going, I have no possible way of doing this
mhm.
because like I've drawn a million figures before. I'm not going to sit there and struggle with, well, what's a nose looks like or what's an ear look like from this angle. It's like I've drawn an ear from every conceivable angle. I've got that dialed in. Um,
That's awesome. That's awesome. Actually, she is replying to Russia and saying, "I say I'm using 3D models for that
for that,
too."
yeah. I've
So
done that a little bit, but I just find it more trouble than it's worth. That's with all that stuff. Every time I've tried to do any of that stuff, it's just been like, this takes me so long to compose and figure out and put everything in. It's just so much faster just to draw it. So
yeah.
I just, most of that, and it's like, does this look like a real building? No, but
Mhm.
my people don't look like real people, and my animals don't look like real animals. My cars don't look like real cars. Everything does kind of seem like it fits together in the same world.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
we're good.
Yeah. So, what influences have shaped your writing and art?
Um, Writing, just whatever I've read or whatever I've taken in. Um, there was there was an old radio show called Vic and Sade, which has got just great dialogue, and I think I've probably taken as much from that as from most anything else, just in terms of the way conversations go and people go back and forth and stuff. It was old show written by Paul Reimer, and it's like this guy's a bloody genius. Um, so that was a big one. But I've read just tons and tons and tons of books over the years, and it's just you just absorb everything you read and go, oh, that's a nice turn of a phrase,
That's a
or
very important advice you just said, Mr. Uri. That every writer you should read more and more and more, observe more and more, so you can have a bank for
but
your
also
writing.
it's really important just to listen to even if you're just sitting there going, I'm just going to listen to podcasts and listen to people who are just talking to each other.
Mhm.
That's the way conversations are. It's like, oh, this is how conversations are formed. People say this and they respond with that, and that's important to just be familiar with that kind of a flow of conversation so that things sound natural.
Mhm. Well, what influences have shaped your art?
Quite a bit. My gateway drug when I was real little was Herb Trimpe, because he was like the first comic I ever bought was an issue of the Hulk real early on, and I just loved it. And
Mhm.
so my brother had gotten a run of Trimpe Hulk comics at school from somebody, and he traded them to me for like doing some tedious menial chore around the house. Like, if you do dishes for me for a week, I'll let you have these. It's like, done, So I got a run of those comics, and those kind of were what started me out. And then once I started buying comics, then it was like, oh, this guy's good too. And so then I got turned on to Jack Kirby, and then Jack became he
Mhm.
became my major influence, I would say. But also in the mix would be Gil Kane and Walter Simonson and Frank Miller and
Mhm.
John Byrne. It's just there. It all ends up being this amalgamation of all your influences. You can look through it and be like, oh, he's drawing rocks like Jack Kirby, but he's drawing hands like whatever. There's all these little pieces of stuff. It's like I learned how to draw ears by looking at Cannon by Wally Wood. And, there's
Well,
like there's all this stuff that comes into the mix. I'm a huge consumer of comic books. I buy tons and tons of comics.
oh, that's amazing. Actually, Mr. Eric just answered your question, Carlos. He just said what influenced his art and his writings. So we move to the next one
And I buy
about
original art too. I've got tons of original art. I just buy like I've got I actually have the original art to the first comic book I ever bought.
Oh,
I have the complete issue, Hulk 156. So I've got the original art to that, including the cover. So
wow.
that was a huge find. But also, I bought a bunch of Jack Kirby artwork when I could. So I've got a couple hundred pages of Jack Kirby artwork, many complete issues of, of things that he did, mostly Commandy, the Last Boy on Earth, and then a few Trimpy things, few Trimpy full issues, and then just various things that I love. It's like, oh, I want to get a CC Beck Shazam, or I want to get. So I just got tons of stuff.
Yeah. Well, Carlos Rafael says Hulk 183 was my first comic too.
That's a good one. That's
Yeah,
a good one.
for sure. So, why and how did you create the iconic The Living Legend Savage Dragon?
Uh, why did I create?
Yeah, why and how?
Oh, I know. Well, he really evolved from being something really very different. Because when he started out, he was a he was a ripoff of Batman. So now imagine, instead of the ears, there was a fin, but there was still the same mask with the same mask hole, but it was a green mask, and then there was that Caucasian flesh spot showing there. But he wore a cape and he had a utility belt and he drove a cool car, or as cool as I could draw one. And that was his kind of whole gig, is he was fighting crime and running around and saving the ladies and the whole bit. And then as time went on, I just got tired of drawing the mask and stuff. And there was a Hulk story where they had ripped apart Bruce Banner from the Hulk and turned him into two separate people. And I was like, I'll just do that. And I took him in and took the two characters. His secret identity at that point William Johnson. So I took William
Mhm.
Johnson and made him a separate guy from the dragon. And then at that point, the dragon just became a green skinned guy with a fin on his head. And at that point, it was a short little fin.
Mhm.
I just kept doing that, and that was me drawing comics when I was, fifth grade on, up through 10th, up through high school. When I was 19, I self-published that fanzine, Graphic Fantasy, and that had a dragon story in it. And then, eventually I was doing regular professional comics and working for other people. So I had about a decade off from doing dragon. I didn't do any dragon stuff for almost 10 years. And then when Image Comics started up, it's like, well, here's my guy. I've already got this guy I created years ago. I'm gonna do that dude. So at that point, I came up with a new fin for his head because the old fin that I did was this short little thing and it always looked stupid. So I was like, all right, this will be the one piece of it that I'm going to reinvent, as I'm going to give him this bigger, cooler fin. But
That's
other
cool.
than that,
So
a lot of the stories were kind of inspired by things that I had done when I was a kid.
yeah.
It was I my goal going into it was I had those graphic fantasy stories that I had done, and my goal was I want to work those two stories into continuity. So I'm going to start someplace different because when I was a little kid, you're a dumb little kid. You don't know how the world works. You don't know
Mhm.
how anything works. So I was just
Mhm.
making it up as I went. But if you actually had read those comics I did when I was a little kid, you go, these are just nonsense. So
Mhm.
as an adult, I was like, okay, well, this is the point where I want to get to. What different path can I take that arrives me at that same location? And so I just came up with a different storyline entirely where now he's going to be a police officer instead of being a superhero. And now he's going to do this instead of doing that. And introduce some of the same characters and some different characters. And then I eventually did work those in as issues 63 and 65 of
Mhm.
Savage Dragon. And then from that point on, it was like, all right, I can do anything. So I, I went off in whatever crazy directions I wanted to go.
This is so amazing, actually. This is going to lead us to another dark part of Savage Dragon. How did you create villains?
Create the villains.
Yeah.
Um, I, you mean some were just you just they're inspired by names or something that you hear where you go, oh, that sounds like that would be a cool name. Low blow. It sounds like Lobo, but it's what a low blow, and you just go, okay, well, what does that name inspire? I'm going to come up with a character to go with that. It would be like a short little scrapper type,
Mhm.
or somebody was having an open face sandwich, like, oh, open face. That would be that's a cool idea for a character. I'm just going to come up with a character to go along with that name. Sometimes it's just as simple as that. And then other
Mhm.
times it's character that I created when I was a little kid that
Mhm.
I can just update. Like Mako dated back to Jaws. I mean, that was super, super a long, long, long time ago. So Mako the Shark Man was really just Jaws with arms and legs. And then
Mhm.
as the years went by, you come up with other characters and other things. And a lot of times it's just doing free form, just making stuff up as you go. I don't have this kind of a villain. I want Dragon to be facing somebody with these kind of powers. Okay, well, what does that inspire? What do you get from that? It's like, all right, like, let me do this, let me do that.
Mhm.
It's not a very complicated process, actually.
Mhm. Actually, I find it complicated when you try to grab an emotion or something from the from the character itself to inflict and flip it and make it extremely the other opposite and make it as a villain. So the villain is something from the hero or the superhero himself. Um, Many in the industry creators don't know how to create the villains of their superheroes. This is why I asked you, so we can learn how did you create such villains. Well, here's from Carlos Rafael. You drew so many characters in that first year or two of Dragon and Freak Force, so you always had the feel of a kid playing in his own toy box and just letting it flow.
That sounds about right. Well, a lot of it was just. I mean, you can just take it and go take your ordinary, characters that are in comics and just go, what if I design new costumes for every single Marvel or DC character? And you just start coming up with new costumes for it. And then be like,
Mhm,
all right, I'm going to color those costumes different than the characters in those comics. And now I'm going to give those characters different powers than they had in those comics. And suddenly you're like, I just created a hundred characters, you know? So it can be as simple as that, to just go, hey, Sandman is this guy and he's made up entirely of sand. Well, what about a guy who's made up entirely of, just pick of something else? He's made up entirely of
mhm,
worms, made up entirely of ants, he's made up entirely of bees, he's made up entirely of shrapnel or glass or diamonds, or, and you just start
mhm,
going down the list of all the different sorts of things that a character could be made up of. He's made up entirely
mhm,
of water, or he's a guy who's made out of ice. He's a guy who's made up of rocks or gravel or whatever. And suddenly you go, oh, well, just that, just riffing on the Sandman idea, suddenly you can go, I've got
mhm,
40 characters made up of different kinds of stuff, and then you start going, oh, there's these characters that blast out of their hands of some kind of explosive stuff. Well, what else could be blasting out of people's hands? It could
mhm,
be poop coming out of their hands. It could be water coming out of their hands. It could be electricity that are coming out of their hands. It could, and suddenly you go, oh, I've got a whole list of different things that could be doing on there. And then you start riffing on movies or just different ideas. And then it's like, what if Dead Man was, instead of being a good guy, was a bad guy, and he's just inhabiting other people and he's
mhm,
going into your body? What about a dead man who could come into your body and transform you into what if the Incredible Hulk, when he was that ethereal form and had been pulled away from Bruce Banner, what if that, as a ghost guy, could inhabit various person and change them into a version of the Hulk? It's like, all right, I
mhm.
can do something with that. Just different ideas and different ways of dealing with this stuff. And there's just so much stuff. Oh, it'd be cool if somebody could walk through walls. Well, how many villains can walk through walls? Do something with that. You know,
That's
there's
that's so
just a
cool.
lot, a lot of
That's so
stuff. It's
cool.
just like, here's an idea. Nobody's done
Yeah,
this, or maybe a million people have done it, but let's do something else different with it and see what you can do with it.
that's
And
so
then
true.
and then it's just coming up with ideas for it. You know,
Mhm,
okay, what goes on? Uh,
mhm,
this character's got, instead of Two Face being this guy who's got half face here and half face here, well, he's got two actual faces heading a different direction, and they're both arguing with each other and got different things that they want to do. I want to go over here. I want to go over there. All right, that's a
yeah.
cool visual. What if somebody's entire body is covered with faces and they've got them all over the place? You know,
Mhm,
hey, don't put that shirt on. You're covering my face. Whatever. You, you know, and you just come up with crazy stuff.
yeah.
Just there's just so many just basic ideas you can do crazy stuff with, and then your hero has to has to cope with these idiots.
Mhm, Yeah.
And sometimes you can have villains who have perfectly reasonable agendas that you go, yeah, but this is causing all kinds of chaos. Where you've got a back to nature type who's like, you know what, really, what the Earth needs to do is we got to get rid of all these
Mm,
cars, man. We got to get rid of all those and get it back to people just walking. It's like, all right, well, yeah, that's going to help the globe out and all that stuff. But if you're taking all people's cars and destroying them, they're not going to be too happy about that. So you end up with those kind of weird conflicts where the hero's going, I'm kind of contributing to global warming here by stopping this villain. So that's not cool.
mm. Well, you just made me want to ask you, how does an idea of a story for a story begin, and what is the steps of your st- um, creative process of writing story, like you just said right
Well, a lot of it is like that, where you just are riffing on different things. But it all starts with character, and you're all starting with people who are, your basic building blocks of characters, and just going, well, what does this character want? What is he trying to accomplish? What does he hope
now?
to do? And that's where conflicts arise, where
Mhm,
somebody may be, your hero may be, I just want to restore order and not have people hurting each other or whatever.
mhm,
We've got these laws and they've got to take uh, and then your villain has got their own agenda. I just want to be a rich guy. I just want to be running the world. I just want to be, and their actions can be altruistic in their own heads. Hey,
mhm.
if I was running the world, everything would be wonderful and things would be awesome. I'm going to make sure everything's great for everybody. Just trust in me. Um,
Mm,
but that's where various conflicts arise in an ongoing series. It's this constant thing of my characters are getting older. They just little kids I just want to go to school. I just want to pass this class. I just want to do this or that, and then you're constantly throwing things in the way that are from being able to do the thing that they're trying to do.
mhm.
So it is a lot of
Yeah,
stories that really just stem from characters and what their own desires and motivations and wishes are. You just play off that.
oh, that's so amazing, actually. So here's another one from Carlos asking, an idea when you will return to the Pacific Northwest for a convention.
Um, we need to get this pandemic under control first. So get vaccinated. Unfortunately, it's I just went up and my family lives up in the Pacific Northwest, so I was actually just up there. Sorry, I missed you. Uh, but until this is really until this is under control, I'm not going to be going to conventions because I don't want to get sick. I don't want my family to get sick, and I don't want to be infecting other people. So I'm at this point when I'm going into places, I'm masking up even though I'm vaccinated, and I'm social distancing best I can.
Mhm.
Going to a convention's probably not going to help out a whole hell of a lot in that regard. So, let's get those numbers down, then we can start talking about doing that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
my family's up there, so any chance of going up, I will gladly take. Because I'll take a couple extra days and drive up and see my mom and brother and sisters and the whole bit.
Well, truly hope everything turns better and this pandemic ends. Well, there is something that all writers and creators face. Couple ones actually, not everyone, when they are writing their own story. If it's an ongoing story, they don't know how to control their story into a short, finished comic book at a 24 page or 20 page, or if they can make it long for maybe 6 issues. So how can they control their
Good luck
their
with that.
script so things doesn't get out of hand while they're writing?
Uh, well, I think a lot of it comes down to just boiling things down to their absolute essence, and that just that's just a matter of editing and just being able to take your story and go, okay, well, what actually needs to be done?
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes, you want to. It's fun to play things out, and it's like, oh, let's devote a whole page to this. But sometimes, really, your scene could be done in a panel. So do that. And I'm when I'm looking through my own comics, there'll be times where I'm sitting there going, I just started drawing this thing and started writing it, and I'm 14 pages into a scene, and I'm realizing, yeah, this is really, uh, it's not succinct. My story's really fatty, and I'm doing a lot of cause and reaction types of shots, and then I'd suddenly realize, oh crap, I've got 6 pages to wrap this thing up. And then it becomes a situation where suddenly my story will get really, really tight and economical, where I'll suddenly just be going, I have to solve this in one panel rather than rather than a page. And so suddenly it's like every panel counts, and suddenly it's like, man, every
Does this
single.
make you does this make you ruin the whole scenery or the whole story, making it shorter into solving it in one panel or something like this?
It can, and it can make it way more exciting at the same time, where you're
Hmm.
where you're suddenly, it just seems like, holy crap, things are really happening at a quick pace here. I can't believe it. Bam, bam, bam. And it just can be a really exciting ending to the story. If it's too you don't want it to look like that if you can help it, because I've seen guys before where you get to the end of the book and suddenly it's like a stamp collection. There'll be like 17 panels a page because they suddenly cram in a million things at the end. And it's like, well, that sucked. Oh, it's a double page spread and a full page picture. And you get to the end of it, it's just like, ah, all these tiny little panels. So you want to have it figured out a little bit better than that if you can manage. Writing it out ahead of time does help. I'll be honest. Uh, and I used to do that constantly. I would get pieces of paper out and write 1 through 20, and then just put a line of, this happens on
Hmm.
this page, this happens on that page, and get it really figured out so that when you're sitting there drawing the thing, okay, I've only got this amount of time and I need to accomplish this by this page.
Hmm. Oh, that's so cool. So,
Somehow I just managed to do it, but yeah, I guess I've been at this a while.
mm,
So yeah, I've been
so
doing this
mm,
professionally now 38 years. So
yeah.
yeah.
So many thanks for this advice, actually. So, as a writer and penciler and an artist, publisher too, what advice can you give to creators, writers, and artists while making their own portfolio and applying for comic companies?
Um, I think most people, the best advice I would give to anybody is just to do the job. If you want to make comics, just make comics, and
Hmm.
not worry about if somebody is hiring or not. Just just do it. Just get some stuff done. I mean, when I was a little kid and making all those comics on my own, it was enormously helpful just to be able to figure out a lot of the things, just to figure out storytelling stuff, to figure out page layout things. It's all practice, and it all is going to help you later on to be able to know how to tell a story. And
Yeah.
it's so vitally important just to be able to get all of this stuff figured out, because a lot of it is just, it just becomes muscle memory of, I don't know what an explosion looks like. How do I draw an explosion? It's like, well, just draw it. Get to it and get this
Yeah.
stuff done.
That's
And
so
part
right.
of it is really just getting those muscles used to doing that task, you know?
Mhm. Well, here's Russia 2 saying, agree, just do it. So stop complaining, stop whining, and stop daydreaming. Just make your dreams come true. This is
I
what
mean, if
Mr. Eric has been saying.
starting out right now, it's just, do a page a day or do 2 pages a day every day. Just get that done every single day. Um, and they don't have to be awesome pages, but just get something done, something accomplished, and they'll get to be awesome after a while because you'll just get the hang of it.
Well, this is going to lead me to a question. How many pages do you do per day?
It varies so much. I can't really put a number on it. I mean, I have plenty of days when I don't get a page done a day, and then
Mhm,
I've done I don't know. I think it did, and also my pencils can be really rough, so
mhm.
where I'm just doing basic figure placement. I mean, I've done as many as 30 pages in a day,
Oh,
but it's super rough. It's not like nobody could ink it. It's just
like
balls and
layouts for.
layouts and stuff where you're just like, okay, you're telling the story, but it's pretty rough. Um,
Mhm,
in terms of doing finished pencils for somebody else to ink, uh, usually a couple pages a day. If I'm doing that, there was a time, and it nearly did me in, where I was
mhm,
doing Savage Dragon and doing uh, I did Spider-Man and Thor. And it was like I was penciling 2 other books while I was still
mhm,
doing Savage Dragon, and I did that for 3 months. And it was like,
mhm,
well, this is not sustainable. Uh, but that was a period where I just, you had to do 4 pages a day of pencils,
mhm,
come hell or high water, because it just had to. There was no other choice, because it's like,
mhm.
I've got to do this because that anchor needs to be working, and I've got these other 2 books that I've got to do. So go, man, go. And then I rolled from that to doing the Defenders and laying out a Fantastic Four World's Greatest Comic Magazine
Mhm.
miniseries. And yeah, that was almost the death of me. I actually got really sick from doing all that.
Well, did you work as an editor before?
Well, I've worked as an editor for stuff that I published. So I've worked as an editor on, I mean, Freak Force to a degree, Super Patriot, Star, all those things that came through me. Sometimes I
Mhm,
would be writing them. Sometimes, sometimes not. Sometimes I would just be an editor on it. Like when
mhm,
Jason Pearson did the Savage Dragon Blood and Guts thing,
mhm.
I was just the editor on there. I wasn't writing it. So
Well, people have been asking, does the editor interfere with the writing process and how the series goes?
well, they can certainly. They can be a real pain in the, it depends on the person. Some do. Some are really hands off, and uh, they'll just hire people that they trust to do a good job. And then there's
Hmm.
others who really would like to be doing the book themselves, and uh, and like that. When I was
Hmm.
uh, when I was an editor, to the extent that I was doing the books that I was doing, I came on there with kind of a real rough outline in the terms of this is the reason this book exists, and this is what I want you to accomplish over the course of this. You know, uh, I have this character, Super Patriot. I want him to go to a point where he's the leader of Freak Force. How do I get from point A to point B? He's right now has his brain possessed and he's being controlled by somebody. How do we work our way through that? And I'll talk it through with whoever is plotting it. We hammer through a story together, and then he goes off and writes it, and then if
Hmm.
there's any changes that need to be made, I'll make those. But as a editor, I've I've worked done some basic art corrections and stuff that needed to be done on other people's artwork too when that's come through. Where it's like,
People artwork and the story
yeah,
writing.
yeah. So there's just stuff where a lot of times when you're drawing, you just don't see stuff. It's and then when it can be like you don't even realize what you're doing. Sometimes there'll be some real tangents that go on in artwork where somebody will have something in their drawing which is just lining up perfectly with something in the background and they didn't even really notice it, and then you
Hmm.
come along and go, no, you got to change this doesn't work. um, Case in point was the cover of the first issue of Super Patriot.
Hmm.
Dave Johnson had drawn this figure of Super Patriot in the air, and he's firing guns and stuff like that. In the background, he had drawn a building, and the
Hmm.
building was exactly behind the main figure, right? So there's this
Hmm.
building here, and what happened is it really grounded this figure to the background in such a way that he looked like he was stuck on the building, like he was a refrigerator magnet. So basically, what I had to do with that was take the building and just kind of make it like I'm going to break this building up a little bit so that there's some air between the figure and that building, so he doesn't look like he's adhered to it.
Hmm.
um, and that just made it a stronger cover. And Dave Johnson, who drew it, actually called me up and said, "Oh man, thanks for that. I just didn't see it. You saved my ass." And I was like, "All right, well that's good. That's a plus. At least he wasn't bitching and moaning about it."
Hmm.
But yeah, sometimes people just don't see that they've screwed up, you know. And then other times, you can go hog wild where you just start making all sorts of arbitrary changes on stuff, and then people get really pissed off about it. So
Hmm.
I try to tread carefully, and usually I'll use people's own artwork to fix their artwork because people have got Photoshop and stuff like that. So if somebody
Hmm.
drew somebody's head like especially big in one panel, he'll
Hmm.
just take in Photoshop and just go shoot and shrink it down a little bit, and nobody's the wiser.
Hmm. So, um, aspiring artists looking hard and dying to get hired by the major comic companies. Is this a good thing, or should they start their own creation? You just say that start doing comics. If you want to work in comics, just start doing comics. But
Mhm.
getting into working for major companies like Image is kind of hard today than maybe from 10 years or from 20 years. So What do you advise for such creators to do?
It depends what you want to do. If your lifelong goal is to draw Spider-Man, there's really only one path for you to take. You know,
Mhm.
it's like there's only one person who's publishing Spider-Man, so you better be hitting those guys up and trying to make that love connection. If you want to tell your own stories, by all means do that. It really depends on so many factors. But at least early on, just get whatever job, whatever work you can get.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
really just put out feelers on everything. And sometimes what happens, like a lot of guys a lot of writers are actively looking for artists to collaborate with. So if you're just making artwork and putting it up on Facebook or putting it up on DeviantArt,
Mhm.
there'll be writers who go cruising those places looking for warm bodies to throw onto stuff. Um,
Mhm.
and people contact me all the time and just be like, "Hey, do you know anybody who's looking for to do something?" And it's like, if I know who they are and they're out there and I know that they're able to produce work, then sometimes I can hook people up. But I mean, things come up, uh, and you know, early on, just do whatever you can to get work. If that means working for nothing on a couple jobs early on, well, if you're going to
Mhm.
be doing samples and getting paid nothing, why not do
Mhm.
a backup story and get paid nothing? It's 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 all just practice at a certain point. I didn't go to art school and I didn't do a lot of the stuff that really professional, accomplished artists did in order to get to the point where
Mhm.
they are. But I did work for really crappy companies really early on and got paid dog crap to do it. And was undoubtedly taken advantage of really early on. Um, but I was doing terrible work for terrible wages, and it was all practice, and it all helped me to be able to figure out how to do this stuff better.
Wow. Wow. That's been a long journey indeed.
Don't sign any long-term contracts. Don't be like, I'm going to commit to doing work for you for 5 years, because it's like, yeah, no, that's not a good idea if you're getting paid dog crap to do
That's very good advice.
it.
That's very good advice, actually.
That, that's
So,
not that's not what you want to do. But if somebody is like, "Hey, you want to do a 10-page story? I can't pay you anything." If you're sitting there with nothing else going on right now, and somebody is like,
do the
"Hey,
art and run.
it's like, do it. What else are you doing? You're doing nothing.
Yeah.
Get that story, get that experience, get that know, and then those become your samples. Hey, I did 10 pages for this. It's like nobody wants to give you your first job, but they'll give you your second job if they can see that you actually can do something. Oh, this guy drew 40 pages over there. Okay, I guess he can draw 40 pages. Something that's more than that
Mhm.
guy at the convention who just shows me a portfolio with three pinups and half of them are not finished. It's like,
Mhm.
I want to know that you can tell a story. I want to know that you can get work done. And if you can show me that you've gotten work done, you're way more valuable to
Mhm.
me than somebody
Mhm.
who's just like, oh, I want to do this, but I'm never actually going to do this. Like, come
Mhm.
on, do something. Get off your ass and do something.
That's a very
Drives
important part, actually. Yeah. So, just something that all of us writers, creators, and artists keep on asking: how can artists or writers build imagination when they don't have enough sources or resources to create or design a universe, design their own Justice Leagues, design their own Savage Dragon. How can they build their own imagination?
I think a lot of people just start off uh, just plagiarizing, and then just keep putting a spin on it. Just be like, I'm
Mhm,
going to do what this guy did over here, only instead of A happening, I'm going to do B happening. A lot of times
mhm,
when you're sitting there watching a story and somebody will make some kind of a decision in that story, you think,
mhm,
oh, I should have made that other decision. Oh, what if he had asked that girl out instead of just being so shy? Oh, what would have happened? How would this story have changed if he had done this other thing? And your
mhm,
what if scenario that you came up with there, that can be your own thing if
mhm,
you make enough other changes to that story that suddenly you make it your own. You take
mhm,
something like Rick and Morty. It's like, well, Rick and Morty came from Back to the Future. They're just
mhm.
riffing on that, and suddenly they come up with a whole new show that was just riffing on something else.
Yeah.
Um, and stories often just come about that way. It's just I meant to do this, I couldn't do that, and so I changed it, and now it became this other thing entirely. And now I've created something new. And if it still seems too familiar to the original source, then just keep changing it till it doesn't.
So you do encourage them to start asking questions and be doubtful about any storyline or
Sure,
novel or comic they're reading.
sure, yeah, sure. And just,
Yeah.
you can take three different things and go, what if all these things were in the same world? You know,
Mhm,
and if you're just going, I want a Batman type. What if Batman was an idiot? What, you know, what if, you know, um, and different things like that. Just like what can I do that would make this a different kind of story? I mean,
mhm.
and run off and do something different with it.
That's amazing. This is so amazing, actually. So many
So many
thanks
of
to
the
you.
so many
Yeah.
of the things you see, that you read, that you consume in this world started off as somebody's version of somebody else's guy.
Hmm.
So much of it is that already, that if you can just kind of embrace that and go, okay, I'm going to start with, I want to do my version of this. Oh, they're never going to let me do Spider-Man, so I'm going to do my own Spider-Man. Only it's not going to be a, a, a man, it's going to be this. It's going to be a woman, and it's not going to be this. It's going to be that. And a lot of people start off with, boy, if I did Spider-Man, this is what I would want to do.
Hmm.
And their idea of what they want to do with Spider-Man is something that they would never do in Spider-Man,
Hmm.
because it's like, this would change everything about Spider-Man if you did this idea that you have for Spider-Man. So at that point, I want to just make it a different guy, because you're not going to be able to do that stuff anyway.
Yeah.
If you want to do your Peter Parker is gay story, which is like, fine, he wants to experiment, he wants to do. It's like Marvel's not going to let you do that. So come up with your own gay Spider-Man, and make some changes to him so he's not exactly Spider-Man now, and do something else a little
Hmm.
different with him, and then suddenly you've got this cool new character that you just came up with, and you can do whatever the hell you want to. When you're doing your own thing, it's a beautiful thing, because I'm sitting
Hmm.
there when I'm writing my own stories, and I'm my own editor, and you know nobody can tell me I can't do anything. The next page of my next issue, I can draw anything I want to on that page.
Hmm.
It's like, what do you feel like drawing today? Oh, I just feel like drawing, whatever. All right, what's stopping you? Nothing. All
Hmm.
right, do it. Off we
Yeah.
go.
start making it. So we are so happy to have you today, Mr. Eric. Actually, we learned so much from you, from your tips and tricks, your adventure, your journey into the comics industry. So many thanks for having you today.
You were quite welcome.
Um,
It's
we
my
are so
pleasure.
honored to have you today. Well, do you read webtoons?
I don't. I'm sorry. What was that?
Webtoons.
Uh, do I read webtoons? Not a lot. Not a lot. Every now and then somebody will send me down some rabbit hole, and I'll go and read a bunch. But I don't seek anything out currently.
Okay, I was going to send you my webtoon, so if you don't mind, can I join those people who send you those webtoons to you?
As long as you don't require feedback, we're good.
No, no, just send it and everything's fine.
All right.
So
Yeah, because a lot of people are like, I really want some feedback on this, and it's like I can't do that. I can't play your editor. I've got too much stuff that I got to
stuff
get done.
going on. Yeah. Well, Russia is
It's
saying
always
webtoon is good too. So
it's
many,
it's so
ma-
time consuming.
yeah.
All right.
Many thanks again, Mr. Eric, and please have a nice day.
All right. Well, thanks for
Goodbye.
having me, and I'll talk to you
Thanks to
later.
you.
All right.
Later.